Tiffany Archuleta. I'm the Program Project Specialist for the Outreach Court Program here at Metro Court. It's the Homeless Court Program here at Metro Court. Metro Court has had some form of a homeless court for many years, but Judge Dominguez took it over in January of 2019 and really started looking at revamping the program. So we started looking at what was going on with homeless courts across the country, and we found the San Diego Homeless Court, which was started in 1989 by a public defender by the name of Steve Binder. He now works for the American Bar Association and came out in May of 2019 and kind of helped us restart our program and gave it a whole new spin. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about our program and hope to answer any questions you might have about our program here at Metro Court. So the Outreach Court really is about removing barriers and assisting people on the journey that they're already on. So we're really looking at enabling individuals who are homeless or precariously housed who are already actively engaged in services and removing those legal barriers along the way so that they can continue to build a journey towards self-sufficiency. We recognize that sometimes a warrant or an outstanding legal obligation may be the only thing that's keeping them from getting into housing, getting a job, or even getting into treatment. And so we really want to make sure that we're removing those legal barriers so that they can continue their progress. And we're allowing them to do so with alternative resolutions. We recognize that this population doesn't always have the means to be able to comply with your traditional court sentences like fines or fees or community service or even jail time. And so we're really giving them the option of taking care of those legal obligations through life skills classes, substance abuse treatment, literacy classes, and really meeting those people where they're at so that they can be successful. Judge Dominguez is our presiding judge. She took over the program again in January of 2019. Our program really hit the ground in May when we started receiving referrals. And the first thing we wanted to look at was what our definition of a homeless person was going to be. We adopted the American Bar Association's definition of a homeless person, which is pretty broad by nature. And we included two things to that: precariously housed and at immediate risk of becoming homeless. We wanted to make sure that we included those individuals who might be in an inpatient program, or those individuals who are couch surfing or temporarily living with relatives, any sort of those temporary living situations. And then we started building our team, and we brought together obviously members of the court. There's myself, our program manager Martin Burkhart, as well as Judge Dominguez. Then we brought on board the Office of the District Attorney, who has allowed us standing stipulation on most misdemeanor cases. And then we also have the law offices of the Public Defender. They've entered into a unique agreement with Judge Dominguez and allowed her to appoint a public defender to every individual coming into the program. So what that means is they don't have to go down to the public defender's office, they don't have to fill out the paperwork, they don't have to pay the $10 fee. Each individual coming into the program does get representation free of charge. We also have private defense bar, so they can help with overflow, as well as our steering committee as far as making sure that their voice is heard in our policies and procedures. We do have a member of APD on our board as well. We have a county attorney on our steering committee. And then we have two community provider liaisons to ensure that the community providers do have a voice as well when forming our policies and procedures. Again, we based our model on the San Diego Homeless Court, which has been adopted by the ABA. And there's 7 guiding principles for a homeless court that we ensured that we were maintaining in our program as well. And those include things like making sure we have a agreed upon set of charges for the program, that each individual is coming in voluntarily, that they're doing so through their program, that all of their rights are being maintained through the program, and that they're not waiving any of their constitutional rights by joining our program. It's unique from other specialty courts in that it's designed to work with individuals who are already engaged in services. your standard specialty court model that you may think of. Typically, that individual is referred by a member of the court, whether it's their attorney, their probation officer, or the judge. And then once they're in the specialty court, they're mandated for services through a very specific provider. This really takes that model and flips it on its head. So really, the way that an individual gets referred to outreach court is through the course of their working with their provider. Their provider then identifies that there's a legal issue and refers them to the court. It's really the provider saying, I've been working with this individual for this amount of time. This is the progress they've made. Can the court use that towards their outstanding legal obligations? So it's really accomplished by collaborating with community providers who are already providing those services to these individuals, and then following those 7 guiding principles so that the participant can enter into our program through their community service provider. Again, the public defender then enters on their behalf and assists them with removing those legal barriers. The beauty of this program is that the participants don't have to come to court. All they have to do is continue to report to their community provider and continue on the plan that they've made with their provider. The only thing that they do have to show up for is their commencement ceremony, where they get their paperwork. That would be their closure paperwork, their order on bench warrant. If their warrant has suspended their license, we can print them clearance paperwork for that license, as well as have that validated so that their MVD reinstatement fee is waived so they can get their licenses back. We also give them a certificate of completion and a bus pass. So they do have to come and get that at their commencement ceremony, and those commencement ceremonies are held in the community the first Friday of every month, typically at First Nations. And then it's important to note that the maximum amount of time in the program is 90 days. We recognize that their progress with their provider is going to extend far beyond that 90 days in both directions, but from the time of referral to the time their case is taken care of is typically 90 days, because that's how long the court would typically have jurisdiction on a misdemeanor case. So to get an individual referred into the program, they are referred by their community provider to outreach. The outreach court will then determine their eligibility. If approved, we'll reach out to all parties and let them know that the individual has been accepted. And then the individual will continue to work with their community provider to build a plan towards self-sufficiency. We can take all misdemeanor cases from Bernalillo County except for DWIs. Those do have their own set of statutory requirements that we can't really take into outreach court. And then domestic violence cases, officer victim cases, cases that might require restitution, those do require a second level of approval from the DA's office. That's not to say that they won't be accepted into the program, but the DA has the obligation to reach out to the victim and make sure that they're okay with the person coming in, and make sure that those victims' rights are being maintained as well. The only things that would prevent somebody from coming into the outreach court program would be having been convicted of a violent felony in the past 7 years. Now, if they were charged with a violent felony but convicted of something lesser or pled down to something lesser, we could still accept those cases. And if their conviction has been longer than 7 years for that violent felony, we would be able to accept that as well. And if they have an outstanding warrant in another jurisdiction, we ask that they take care of that warrant prior to coming into the program. Now, they don't have to take care of the entire case. We just ask that they take care of the warrant, so that at graduation we can print them the clearance paperwork on those warrants and make sure that they can get their license back. So the referral process starts with 2 forms: the referral form and the release of information. Once we get those 2 forms, we'll run them through NCIC and check to make sure that they're eligible. If they are not eligible, we're not punitive. We'll just give the case back to you, let them know that they're not eligible for our program, but we'll point you in the direction of who can help. If they are eligible, the case will get set for a review in 30 to 45 days. Their appearance is not required for that setting, and we'll ask you to sign a client commitment form with the individual. That form really just memorializes the fact that they're entering into the program voluntarily and gets the conversations going between the provider and the individual that's coming in as to what their plan is going to look like, how frequent their contact with their provider is going to be, etc. Prior to their review, I'll reach out to the provider and I will ask them for an advocacy letter. This is really the meat and potatoes of the program. This is where their provider outlines the progress and participation that this individual has put in and really explains all the hard work that they've been doing. I'll take this advocacy letter to the team and we'll review it, and if it's appropriate for closure, they'll get slated for a commencement ceremony, and then they will get their closure paperwork at that time. So this is the referral form. This is submitted at referral, and there's a lot of fields on this form. We recognize that the provider may not have all of this information, and that's okay. We just ask that they fill out as much as possible. As many pieces of information as you have is best. And we are asking that anyone making referrals not have a non-professional, familial, or domestic relationship with the individual. This is the release of information. This goes hand in hand with the referral form. This is probably the most legal form in the whole bunch, but this really is protecting the individual on a court level. Having this form in their court file means that somebody coming in to look at their file wouldn't be able to tell that that person's receiving services somewhere, so it's just protecting them on a court level. It's not so much that the provider can share information with the court, because we really don't need to know specifics. We just need to protect them so that if somebody comes in and looks at that file, they can't see that they're receiving services. And then this is the client commitment form. This form is submitted to us once they've been formally accepted into the outreach court. And again, it just memorializes that the person's entering into the program voluntarily, and it gets the conversations going between the provider and the client as to what their contact is going to look like, what their plan is going to look like. And then this is the advocacy letter. This is really the heart of the program. On this form, you can use your own form, or you can use this as a sample. It can be free form, it's fine. We just ask that you outline the participants' progress within your program, their participation. We ask you to highlight their participation hours and quantify that so that we can look at how much the individuals really put in. And then we'll take this to the meaningful review meeting, and the team will look it over and determine whether or not their progress is sufficient to take care of their case. If it is, we'll slate them for a commencement ceremony the next month. And if we feel like they need to do a little bit more, we'll just reach out to you afterwards and let you know that we've reset their review for either 2 weeks or 4 weeks, whatever the case may be. We do ask that you get all of our forms off of our website, because our program is ever evolving and always changing, and those forms can be updated at any time. If you get them off the website, we can ensure that they're always the most up to date. Our website is a little arduous, so we just give you a little hint. If you Google Outreach Court, we're the first link that pops up. So let's talk about some incentives of Outreach Court. They get their fines and fees satisfied. The individual's community service can get satisfied if they're post-conviction. If it's pre-conviction, their case gets closed or the underlying charge itself gets dismissed. The Law Office of the Public Defender is appointed without application and without fee for that individual. They can avoid coming to the courthouse altogether. They can get their clearance paperwork printed for their license. And the MVD reinstatement fee for that is waived as well. And then most importantly, if somebody comes into our program and has a warrant, again, we recognize that that warrant may be keeping them from getting a job, getting housing, getting into treatment. So we try and get those warrants deactivated within 24 hours so that that's no longer a legal barrier for that individual on their course of progress. But most importantly, Outreach Court incentivizes your program because to comply with Outreach Court, they have to comply with your program. Again, we are not punitive, so if you lose contact with an individual, we will reset the review hearing for 30 days. This gives both their attorney and their provider a chance to try and reach out to this individual, make contact, and get them to re-engage. If that's unsuccessful, it will get set for a formal hearing on Judge Dominguez's formal docket, and at that point, notice will get mailed out with the language, "You must appear." If that's still unsuccessful, the case will get set back on the original trial judge's docket. So worst case scenario, that person is right back where they started. This has only happened a handful of times in the program. I think that having the opportunity to reach out to an individual and help them become successful really does work. So what do you need to do as a provider? We do ask that each provider become an approved provider. And what that means is you'll have an approved criteria on file with the Outreach Court, outlining what you're going to be looking for from each participant coming into Outreach Court through your program. Once we have this approved criteria on file, it does get you a spot on our app. And this is what the app looks like. This is a shareable app through Glide, so it's not something you would find in the Google Play Store or the Apple Store. It's shareable via QR code or via text or email link. And this works in a couple of ways. There's a list of all of our providers on the app that we can send to individuals who are interested in getting a referral. So they can look at it and say, oh, I'm familiar with this provider. I'll ask them for a referral. Or they can look at it and look at the list of services each provider is providing and determine which one would best suit their needs. Now, this is not a requirement to be an approved provider before submitting referrals. We are accepting referrals from anyone who wants to send them, but we do ask that each provider start thinking about that criteria and what they would expect and submit that in the near future. All of our artwork for the slides were provided by Artists at Art Street, which is an extension of Albuquerque Healthcare for the Homeless. We work very closely with them. And I just want to thank you for listening to our presentation. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Please feel free to look at our website, and we have lots of FAQs on there, as well as all of our downloadable forms, and lots more information that you may find helpful. Thank you.